Oh, look at that cedar. Nice cedar tree. Two really nice cedar trees. Look at those. Oops.
It was too hot in Portland, so I decided at the last minute to go ride my bike in Bellingham, where it was forecast to be 20 degrees cooler. That meant I had time to come ride the two most popular trails at Chuckanut. The two trails that I pointedly did not ride the last time I rode Chuckanut, Double Black and Double Down. But I didn't shuttle them. It's only 1,600 feet of climbing, so I figured there was no need for a shuttle. So I started at the trailhead that also starts at the bottom of Fragrance Lake Road, and I found this luxuriously paved trailhead that even has bathrooms. Apparently there's water available, and I got to climb up the aforementioned luxuriously shaded Fragrance Lake Road, which starts right here at the trailhead. So seriously, that road is so nice. Shade from top to bottom. All right, so stay off the hiker single track when you're down here. There's no need to ride any of the hiker trails down here near the trailhead. About a quarter mile up the road, you'll see the bottom of Double Down on your left. That's where you'll be coming out when you're done with this ride. This road, by the way, is Cadillac gravel. It's almost perfect for just climbing. Heck, I mean, it's not an exaggeration. I would gladly ride a gravel bike on this road with no reservations. Seriously, with a road climb this pleasant, I was actually really confused about why people even bother shuttling this. When you see this intersection with Burnout, stay to the left. Don't leave Fragrance Lake Road. You want to stay on this road. And hey, look at this. There's even a little water trickle with a grotto off to the side of this road. Very pretty. If you had shuttled this, you wouldn't even know that was there. Oh, and by the way, you should make sure you're subscribed to my channel if you haven't already. Smash that like button too. If you wanted to stop the climbing at 775 feet, you could just ride Double Down, as you'll intersect with the top of it from the climbing road. Also, if you really liked Double Down, it would also be, a pretty worthy add-on if you'd already done the climb once and decided you wanted a second run but didn't want to climb all the way to the top. You could just go halfway to the top and you'd be like at a 2,500 foot day and it would be perfect. Another thing I hope you'll decide you'll want to do is navigate to patreon.com/voiceovertrailreviews and choose the level at which you'd like to support more informational content like this. One of the things that's cool about being on a bike, by the way, is that when half the road gets washed out by a landslide, it's not a problem. See, I just rode on by as if I didn't even know it was there. I mean, I knew it was there. You could see the washout. Anyhow, when you get to this signboard, you'll also want to stay to the left. Basically, just stay to the left at most of these intersections on the way up the hill until you get to this intersection where you'll want to stay to the right. In the interest of full disclosure, the road has been pretty steep up to this point. I mean, it's really steep. And here where it narrows into a trail, it's going to get unbelievably steep. Steepity steep. I guess that's why so many people shuttle this. It's short, but it's stairs. It's steep. But all that said, I still don't think you should be shuttling this mountain. When the Fragrance Lake Road or Trail or Trode finally meets up with Cleator Road right here, turn right on Cleator Road. The road is way less steep here, so that's kind of nice. There's a little bit of auto traffic on this road as there is a lookout up at the top. I was hoping to get a picture from that lookout, but I forgot to because I missed the turn while I was descending. Oh well. Now, I'm a glutton for punishment, which means that you don't need to do this the way that I did this. Cleator Road does also lead to the top of Double Black, so you don't need to push your way up the ridge trail. But where's the fun in that? Some parts of the ridge trail going this way are actually pedalable, but most of it is just going to be a push. I mean, pushing up this trail is an objectively stupid idea, but the views through the trees to the left are pretty good views. Besides, if I hadn't pushed my bike up the ridge trail, I wouldn't have run into Jeff Kendall Weed while he was in the middle of making a video. Speaking of which, you should definitely keep your eyes wide open for descending bikers if you are going to push your bike up the ridge trail. What are the odds of encountering another YouTuber, Bellingham, especially? What are the odds of encountering another mountain biking YouTuber in Bellingham? High. Actually, the odds are very high of encountering another mountain biking YouTuber in Bellingham. It's actually not all that unexpected. This slab of sandstone is kind of the top of the hill, so now you can descend to the bottom of the hill. That's what the bikes here. That's why we rode our bikes to the top. I ended up blowing right by whatever little connector trail hooks up to the road, so I didn't realize that I was actually already on the trail when I started riding the trail. I kept stopping to figure out if I was going the right way. Now, this top part, the part that doesn't get ridden as often, was my favorite part of this entire descent. Kind of makes sense now that I think about it. Anyhow, take a ride at this intersection. This upper part of the trail contains all the features necessary for a fun, rhythmic riding experience with all the expected compound features requiring integrated skills. If you don't like the top, you won't like the rest of the trail either. Trust me. I love that there are actually some flat corners up here. You don't need a berm for everything. But as I descended, I started noticing that this trail is kind of a victim of its own popularity. This little transfer is the only pedaling I had to do on the descent, by the way. I wish I'd seen this feature coming because then I would have kept my speed up and that would have made it more fun. I guess if you had multiple runs on this trail in the same day, you'd know what features were coming and then you'd be prepared to clear them when necessary. So generally, as advanced trails go, there isn't a lot to differentiate this from pretty much any other heavily ridden advanced mountain biking trail in Washington. There's a certain kind of rutted out that a trail like this becomes when it gets too much traffic. The fact is, raw, rooty, and steep descents like this don't hold up well to traffic. As the dirt wears, compacts, and erodes away, it just leaves behind the rocks and roots as features and tread wear into odd shapes, and the trail becomes sort of an unpredictable, grotesque version of itself. Without the damage, the trail seems like it wants to be a techie rhythm trail, I think, but the rhythm, if it was ever there, is gone now. At this point, it's just a chunderfest from top to bottom. Now, right here where you cross this trail is the top of Double Down. And right after the intersection is where I came across features that kind of exemplify what I hate the most about trails like this. It pains me to say this. This route drop, for example, has become unrideable for the majority of people riding this. So everyone is trending to the left on their second and third shuttle runs, slowly pushing the line to the uphill side of the bench. But there's an old and established tree up there, so all they're doing over time is exposing yet more roots and making this worse overall. This trail is also super slippery when it's dry, as well as when it's wet, so it's just best not to depend on your brakes to help you, I guess. It's all incomprehensible nonsense. I'm sure that this would be better under better moisture conditions, but so what? Conditions are less than ideal for most of the year. I'm not impressed with trails that only ride well under ideal conditions, especially when they're so popular and everyone keeps telling me that I have to ride them. After crossing the road, the trail takes on an entirely different character. I suppose if you wanted to be charitable, you'd call this entrance technical. And in this case, I suppose that's an acceptable euphemism for completely trashed. I think if I knew this was here and I wasn't alone and didn't have a 5-hour drive home in front of me, I'd probably approach this entrance with speed from the road. But even so, I'm not a fan of this kind of chunder because there isn't, again, this rhythm thing that I'm kind of fixating on. There's no rhythm to it. The way to ride this is just to relax, charge through, and let it throw you around while hoping you can hang on to the bike. It's not exactly graceful. I'd be happier if it were an honest rock garden instead of just some kind of thrashed entrance. It doesn't know what it is or what it wants to be. And that's going to be the basic motif for the rest of this lower section of Double Down. There were a lot of fun roll downs, steps, tight turns, and root balls that I genuinely enjoyed. But this trail is getting so much traffic that people who aren't skilled enough to be on this trail, or people who are skilled and should be moving on, are making new lines. Now, the people who aren't skilled are poking around for easier lines, and I think that's the bigger problem. They follow what they think might be easier contours off to the sides of the main line, only to discover that what they thought was going to be a safety line is even harder than the main line, which is why the main line was put where it is in the first place. So they get off the bike anyway, but now it's too late because they formed a little social safety line. They form the same way social trails form, right? Social trails that, like those trails that go off the side of the main trail, and you think they go somewhere, but it turns out it doesn't go anywhere, but everybody else keeps following it thinking it goes somewhere, and it just perpetuates. Anyhow, social safety lines work the same way. They just keep perpetuating even though they're not a safety line. A safety line is a line that it's when you see a really scary looking feature and you try to go off the side of it and take an easier line. That's a safety line. On top of all of this social safety line thing, as the soil gets skidded away and compacted from usage, the root balls get more and more exposed to the point that the main line is unrideable because then you don't have root shelves anymore. You just have like roots sticking 6 to 12 inches up out of the dirt, just catch pedals. And so that main line becomes unrideable to a high enough percentage of riders that they start creating more and more of these social safety lines, which themselves become skidded out and unrideable from overuse, and the trail just gets wider and wider and weirder over time. On a more lightly used trail, or at least one that doesn't have easy shuttle access, the builders can periodically close off those social safety lines and dedicate attention back to the main line, preserving the character of the trail. In this case, it's just a losing battle. There's too many people riding it. There's too many like mediocre riders coming down it who are skidding and then creating brake bumps, which makes everybody else have to slam on their brakes, getting more dirt out. It's just a spiral. Anyway, maintaining the trail alignment becomes an impossible task, like stacking straw in a windstorm. Okay, I've been saying a lot of mean things. So to be fair, most of the features I had to walk were a problem for me personally, because this was the first time I rode this, and so I wasn't sure what to expect. So trying to be a responsible rider, of course, I wanted to scope stuff out before I committed to it. But I was riding the perfect bike for a trail like this. I was riding my Transition Patrol, and it's a 170 mil bike. So that's the right bike for this trail. And if you're riding this trail, ride your trail bike that has the largest amount of travel that you can get. And this right here, this is an example of what I'm complaining about with all these safety lines that are forming. In this case, there's a very low consequence roll down that looks steep, so folks are trying to avoid it. But the lines that are forming to the left and the right of it are just stupider. They're less safe. They're less fun. They're just dumb. The main line is more fun and it's not that scary. But because these stupid social trails to the other side have been allowed to form, it's robbing people of potential good times. Ugh. So my overall impression is, ironically, that I would only do this trail if somebody shuttled me to the top, because it's not worth pedaling to the top, not even on a nice shady road. It's not worth it. But that's sort of my general feeling about big rowdy trails like this in general. If the purpose of the trail is just to hit as hard as possible, as fast as possible, then there's no real point in climbing to the top just to get beat up. Besides, I don't want to be overly sweaty and tired when they bring me in for a broken clavicle. So this trail suffers from the shuttle curse. It's so blown out that it just hammers on the riders so hard that no one wants to descend it after climbing it. The way to keep trails like this from getting trashed is to put them at the end of long climbs. That way, the only people trying to ride them are folks who know what they're doing, because people who don't know what they're doing generally don't climb for 9 miles to descend a double black trail that they shouldn't be descending. A shuttle accessible trail should be hardened more and built up to withstand the usage it's getting. So it should be a more park-like trail. That's the whole point of a park trail. It's called a park trail because it's designed to handle the usage of a park. You just don't get raw if there's a lot of riders. That's not how it works. It may be in that case that this just isn't a good place for a shuttle trail. That's entirely possible and totally acceptable, and it should be considered an acceptable explanation. I just don't know who's supposed to want to ride this. By the time you're good enough to ride a trail like this, there are other better trails that you can ride nearby without breaking a scapula, or you should be getting into the more pedally tech on the other side of this mountain. But if you're a person who loves big jumps, big hits, and you just want huge drops, I think there's better stuff for you over at Galbraith. For such a hot day, both of these trails kind of left me cold. I mean, oh well, it happens. Anyhow, I'd like to take this moment to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Loamy Goodness level sponsors Andy Suery, Charles Kim, Damon Corey, and Randy Relithford. I'd also like to thank my Hero Dirt level sponsors earning their special mention at the end of this video: Bryce Ulrich, Dave PNW, Devin Young, Edward Lanton, Heather von Valkenburg, Jason Moore, and Pedro Cantarini. If you'd like to join this group of sponsors, doubling down on putting this channel in the black, navigate to patreon.com/voiceovertrails and sign up to be a sponsor. Now, get out there and go ride your bike.